recording today's session, and we will be getting that recording out to you after. Again, as you are just joining, please continue to put your name and where you're from and a favorite meal into the chat. It will provide some great inspiration for us on our meal planning. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Simple Steps for Meal Planning. My name is Kelly Kunkel, and I'm here with my colleague, Mary Schroeder, and we are Extension Educators in Health and Nutrition with the University of Minnesota Extension. And we are delighted today to be talking about simple steps to meal planning. Before we begin, if you do not have a pencil or pen and paper in front of you, please take a moment to go and get one. We'll just wait a second and continue to watch the names and locations and meals come in, but you'll need at least 2 pieces of paper and a pencil or a pen, or a crayon or a colored pencil or whatever you would like to use. And you are, of course, welcome to turn on your camera. And if we, as we go along today, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and we'll respond to those questions. So to begin today, we have a poll for you, and the poll, and if you could respond to this poll, why are you participating in today's webinar? Is it for personal use, for professional use, or for both personal and professional use? And sharing results. You should see that it's pretty close, both for personal and professional use. So thank you so much for taking the poll. So for our plan for today, we are going to learn simple steps for meal planning. And then we're going to take some time to apply what you've learned by writing a meal plan. So that's our plan for the day. And Mary and I think this topic is so important now more than ever, as students are going back to school and schedules are certainly getting busier. We're finding as students are going to sporting events and other school events, but also going back to work for many of us after being at home for the last year and a half. It's time to start making lunches and bringing lunches home for, lunches when you go to work. So this is just a really important topic, and we hope you enjoy it. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Mary, and she's going to talk about quick meal ideas.
Hi there, my name is Mary Schroeder, and I'm an extension educator, and I'm based out of the Marshall Regional Office in Southwest Minnesota. And just a little bit about myself that might kind of help as I talk a little bit more about the quick meal planning is I live in the country, and I have a husband and also 2 daughters who are now back in school. They're both in high school. So things have changed quite a bit in terms of meal planning and just kind of getting everything back in sync. My husband is also a teacher, so we go from everybody kind of being home except for me to all of a sudden everybody has different schedules. So I also grew up on a farm, and my mother was I like to say she wasn't a stay-at-home mom. She was a farm employee also herself, because she was very actively involved in our farming situation. But I grew up in an environment where our meals were basically meat and potato, like a roast or a chicken, and we always had potatoes. And it was a pretty well-rounded meal, with the vegetables and the fruit and even dessert on a, pretty much on a daily basis at every meal, because that was what my dad, really preferred. So she was, again, that was kind of one of her main roles as a farm wife. So she spent a lot of time in the kitchen. And actually, if you look at some of the research, they say in the 1960s, 70s, food preparation usually took around an hour. That was how long people spent preparing their evening meal. If those of you have access to the reaction button in your chat or in the Zoom, just put a thumbs up if you spend 60 minutes preparing your evening meal on a regular basis. Okay, we have one person. Okay, so most people aren't, a couple people smiling there and thumbs up. Most of us aren't spending 60 minutes making our meals right now. Typically, they find that people spend probably 20 to 30 minutes making their evening meal. A lot of times people are, coming home from work, they're coming home from other commitments, and it's that big question of like, what am I going to have for dinner? What am I going to eat? And people really do want something that, I shouldn't say they really want something that's quick. A lot of times it is that necessity of something that's fairly quick. So today we're kind of going to go through some different quick meal ideas, and also just different strategies that you can do. So maybe if you really do want more of that meat and potato meal, things that you can do to kind of plan ahead so you can still have those meals. The one reason I brought up about how I grew up was that sometimes I feel really guilty when I am giving my kids more like tacos and things that are just, again, the quick, maybe scrambled eggs and muffins, because I grew up having, again, that meat and potato meal. And I think it's really important to remember that no matter who you are and whatever you're doing, just be happy with that. Don't feel guilty. It's like, I'm not doing it how I grew up. I should be doing more. I should be doing this. As long as you're really doing your best, that's a real key thing. Another thing as we're going through this training today is that everybody has different cultures and backgrounds and food preferences. So what we're going to kind of talk about is very broad, and you can personalize it for yourself and what your tastes are and what you like to do and how much time you have too, because maybe some of you are in a situation right now where you do have a lot of time for meal prep, which is great, but it's still nice to have some of those few quick meal ideas and just some strategies to kind of maybe save a little bit of time by doing some of that meal planning. So next slide, Kelly. I'm going to start by just kind of talking about some good foods to keep on hand when it comes to meal preparation. Some of these will help with quick meal service, and then some of them are always just, things that you might want to have on hand if you are making, a meal that maybe is going to take a little bit longer. Okay, so we're going to start out with the fruit and vegetables. And a couple of things to keep in mind with these is they come in a variety of different forms: fresh, frozen, canned, dried, juiced. And they all have their role, and they all have a different place in terms of being healthy. A lot of times we assume that fresh is always best, but if I buy fresh broccoli and it sits in my refrigerator for 10 days before I finally get around to using it, it's going to have less nutrition than the frozen broccoli that, was quickly brought to the factory and quick frozen. So again, don't feel like I always have to be serving fresh or I always have to be doing that. Do what works best for you, because that's a very key thing, because if you feel guilty about it, it just makes it a frustrating process. And we want you to enjoy being able to feed yourself and your family. A couple tips if you are using like canned vegetables is that you can actually rinse them off, and that's going to get rid of some of that excess salt. So if you're trying to cut back on salt, just take your canned peas and you put it in a strainer and then run some water over it, and that'll remove some of the salt. Also with canned fruits, sugar does have a purpose in canning fruit products. If you have ever compared like a pear in syrup versus a pear in juice, you'll find that pear in syrup is much softer because of the process. And then the one in the juice is oftentimes quite hard. So my family, we prefer the softer one. So we just make sure we buy the one in juice, but then we pour off the juice and then we rinse it off, and that's going to get rid of some of that excess sugar. So that's just another way that you can make something that's convenient, maybe just a little bit healthier. I also put potatoes on here. Potatoes are not necessarily a real quick meal item. Usually most ways we prepare potatoes usually take at least 20 to 30 minutes. And if you bake a potato, that takes even longer, but they're just really a nice item to have on hand because you can do so many different things with them. You can add them, to soups, you can add them to stews, you can add them to salads. You can also mash them and fry them up in hash browns. Just a whole versatile way you can use potatoes. I like to say white potatoes kind of get a bad rap because they are higher in calories and starch, and then especially when you put some of the different toppings on it. But a lot of times it's because we eat too much of them. If you just have a small potato, that's the real key thing. You're not having the big mammoth baking potato, just a small size. And I'd also encourage you to expand your horizons a little bit. If you haven't used sweet potatoes, try sweet potato instead. That's going to have more vitamin A in it, which is also good for your eyes and also has a really good flavor. So next, Kelly. Next category is just our bread and tortillas and some of our grain products. Again, I keep a loaf of bread in the freezer just so I always have one on hand. Again, sometimes you might just want a sandwich for a quick meal. And if you're out of your regular bread, it's nice to have one on hand in the freezer. Make sure you're storing your extra loaf of bread in the freezer and not in the refrigerator, because in the refrigerator, it gets a little bit more moisture built up and the quality decreases much quicker. So throw it in the freezer instead of in the refrigerator. Another thing is with pasta, there's all sorts of different varieties of pasta out there. Some pastas can take up to 20 or 12 minutes to cook. But if you take like an angel hair pasta, that's a very thin spaghetti, that can cook in 4 to 5 minutes. So again, if you're looking for something quick, choose like an angel hair pasta, because that's going to cook up really nice and quick. We also have brown rice listed. Brown rice is a little more nutritious because it has the bran on the outside. So you're getting more fiber and you're also getting more nutrition from that bran. However, that bran is really hard, so it takes almost twice as long to cook brown rice as it does to cook white rice. So you have a couple options. If you're really good about planning ahead, you can make sure you allow that 45 minutes for your brown rice to cook. Or if you're like me, I prefer to spend a little extra money on instant brown rice, and then that cooks up in 10 minutes because it's already been kind of pre-cooked. So you kind of sometimes have to balance out, do I want to pay a little bit more for the convenience, or do I want to pay a little less and plan the time? So just a little hint on that if you're looking for something quick sometimes. Next. These are also nice protein sources that you can do quick meals with. Eggs, again, like the potatoes, very versatile. You can fry them, you can poach them, you can scramble them, you can make some really quick egg bakes, just a variety of different things you can do with that. Canned beans are a great source of protein, and they are very quick. And I'm talking about like the kidney beans and the black beans and the pinto beans, more of that protein source of a bean versus a green bean. Very quick and easy to add to things. If you have spaghetti sauce and you don't have time to fry up some hamburger, add some kidney beans to it. I know it sounds like maybe something you might not typically do, but it really does taste good. So that is a quick and easy one to try. I also like to keep a variety of canned meats such as tuna and salmon handy. And you can add a little mayonnaise and you can make a tuna or salmon sandwich, or you can make like a salmon patty too very quickly in about 15-20 minutes. Another idea for maybe like your hamburger and your chicken is to make some ahead of time and you can just freeze it. For example, I had 2 pounds of ground beef. We just browned it all up and then I put it in a gallon freezer bag in my freezer. And then on those days when I may be in a little bit of a hurry, I can just pull it out and grab a can of spaghetti sauce and quickly make spaghetti. So that's really handy too. Next. The last one is just some of the dairy products. And the one I wanted to mention on here is the milk. It's nice to keep some dry or shelf stable milk, like your evaporated milk on hand. That way, if you run out of your fresh or fluid milk, you have something that you can quickly whip up, because a lot of recipes do call for milk. And I know we had made scalloped potatoes a couple months ago probably, and I was out of fluid milk and I used the dry milk that had been reconstituted. And my family says those were the best scalloped potatoes ever, and now that's kind of how we make them. So it is kind of fun to try it in some different recipes, because it does work very, very well if you run out of the fresh milk. So next slide. So again, those are just some things that are good staple things to keep on hand that you can make some quick meals out of. I like to call this the other things, or kind of the things that you can add to those foods to kind of jazz them up a little bit, to make it more of like a meal. Spaghetti sauce, salsa, soups, broths and bouillons, seasoning and condiments. Just having a variety of those things on hand, you can do a lot of mixing and matching and really come up with some, neat recipes that are quick and easy to prepare. So next slide. So this is an example of a way that you can do a fairly quick meal. and use things that you have around the house, or use leftovers, or use something that you're trying to maybe, I don't want to say get rid of, but that you need to get used up before it goes bad. It's called the mix and match casserole. So if you grab that piece of paper that you had, we're actually going to do this. It's kind of an activity together. And when you're done, you will have a casserole that you can make tonight for supper if you would like, or maybe you want to save it and do it tomorrow. But I encourage you to give this a try because it really is fun. If you have kids, it's a fun activity to do with them. So the first thing I would like you to do is to pick out a starch, whether it's a pasta, rice, or potatoes. And again, you can save time by pre-cooking these. That's going to make the cook time a little bit slower or quicker. Next, choose a protein source. This can be some type of meat like chicken or beef. It could be fish or chicken, or it could be like a tofu or beans, any type of protein. Then you're going to want to choose a vegetable. And this is where it's nice. Again, it gives you some example. You can use a bag of frozen vegetables. You can use canned vegetables, fresh vegetables. Or I also, a lot of times will take, you know how you maybe just have a small amount of peas left after a meal or corn. I just keep a bowl in the freezer and I just put my leftovers in there. And then when it comes time to do a casserole or soup like this, you can just dump that in too. So that's a way to prevent that food waste. And then a sauce. So you can use some type of cream soup, whether it's cream of mushroom, cream of chicken, tomato, or if you want to avoid the cream soups, you can also use like a tomato juice. That's another option. Add some flavor like with celery and onions and some of your other seasonings. And then finally, you can also top it with like cheese. And some people like to even put a little cereal on the top for some crunch. Okay. So again, it's really a neat activity. And it's fun to try different combinations. And the first time I was introduced to this was probably about 20 years ago. And we had like, they literally had envelopes where we were making this in training. And we had to pick out the starch. We had to pick out a protein and the sauce. And this is what I picked out. Mine was rice, tuna, canned peas, and tomato soup. And I was like, seriously, this is going to be the worst thing ever. And it actually tasted surprisingly very good. It's definitely not something I make on a regular basis, but it was really fun to see how any combination kind of works. And I tried it with other things too, and it works well. So again, I'd encourage you to give that a try. So next slide. Just a couple of my quick favorite meals that I like to do is a bean burrito. And this one is super simple, and we'll have the link to the recipe for you afterwards for this one. It's just black beans mixed with salsa. You could also add chicken, but we like to do just the black beans because it goes much quicker. You roll it in a tortilla, add a little chili powder, and then put some cheese on top and you bake it off. Super quick. My kids make it all the time. And it's kind of one of our main go-to quick recipes. Another one I like is just a rice and chicken dish. So again, it's really similar to that recipe you saw before. And I really can mix and match depending upon kind of what mood I'm in or what foods I have. So a lot of times I just start with the chicken and the rice in bouillon. And then if I'm looking for something a little bit more spicy, I'll add some salsa and some black beans to it. Or if I want something a little bit more cheesy, I might add cheese to it. Okay. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly.
Thank you, Mary. So here are some of my quick favorite meal tips. And just so you know, I'm married and I have 3 adult children. And so some of these favorites came about when my children were younger, and especially the spaghetti. I used to do spaghetti with the whole wheat pasta, and I always used angel hair because it went much more quickly. Would oftentimes have hamburger already pre-cooked, especially if I knew that we were in a hurry at some time. And then it was always nice to be able to have spaghetti on nights maybe my children had company, or they had more company than I thought that we were going to have. And you could always add more noodles or add more sauce to accommodate the additional people in the house. And it really works well for leftovers too, or do-overs. And so we would have leftover spaghetti later on in the week. Eggs, as Mary said, are very versatile. And one of the favorites in our household is a quick egg sandwich, especially if we're in a hurry. And it doesn't take much time, putting it on toast and maybe a can of tomato soup to go with it. And it's a full meal. And then the last one was macaroni and cheese. That was the one my husband always made when I was gone at work. And that would be macaroni and cheese. And we would encourage him to make it a little healthier by using half of the seasoning packet. And then also maybe adding some vegetables like broccoli or even tuna to the mix. And everybody seemed happy with that meal. So those are just some of the quick meal favorites that I had in my household. Many of you had questions about freezer meals. And so we want to talk a little bit more about freezer meals, and there's benefits of pros and cons to freezer meals. Certainly some things that are some benefits to the freezer meals is that you can prepare your meals when you have time. You can use your oven more efficiently by making many things at the same time. You can avoid waste by freezing leftovers for those do-overs that we talked about. And that's something that we do in my household a lot now with just two of us cooking and eating. I'm still making some of the same recipes I did when I had 3 children in the house. And so we have larger portions, but it works out beautifully because I can take those portions and then put them in the freezer for lunch or sometime later on down the line. You can prepare special diet foods or baby foods in single portion sizes, and then you can put them in the freezer. You can save time by doubling or tripling recipes. So you're making one big batch at one time and then freezing so that you can use it later on. You can save money by making convenience foods yourself. So that really looks like, we used to call them TV dinners. You're making your own TV or individual meals and dinners. And so it does really help to save money, and it's generally healthier and less sodium in those meals than the ones you might get frozen meals at the grocery store. On the other hand, freezing is expensive when you total the cost of packaging, energy use, and the freezer itself. The freezer fills up very quickly, and so oftentimes we might need a separate freezer, and so that becomes an expense. You use more energy to cook, freeze, and reheat a dish than you would have if you cooked it immediately and then ate it. You prepare foods that are relatively prepared foods have a relatively short storage time. And so that's important to remember. Not that it's going to make you necessarily sick, but the quality of the food over time can be impacted the longer it stays in the freezer. And so I'm going to put into the chat some information about freezer times and refrigerator storage times from the University of Minnesota Extension. Oops. I'm going to have to, I'll have to do that. I'll send that link to you instead. Because I have another survey here, but it's really important to make sure that food safety is so critical in freezing foods and storing foods. And so when you take a look at the storage times, some things freeze better than others. And so remembering that, mayonnaise based or Miracle Whip or salad dressing types of things don't freeze very well. So that takes out things like potato salad or macaroni salad. Fried foods get gummy or just too full of moisture, so they don't necessarily work well for freezing. Milk, sauces, and gravies, especially those thickened with cornstarch or flour, don't freeze well. They tend to separate. Sour cream doesn't work well. Anything with a crumbled mix, oh thanks Mary, does not work well. And Mary just put that food safety guide into the chat. Gelatin will often separate. Fruit jellies also don't freeze well. And blocks of cheese, while you can certainly freeze blocks of cheese, when you thaw them, they tend to crumble more. So if your intent is to just use it for melting and putting it into casseroles, you'll be fine. But if you want to have a slice of cheese, it doesn't work as well. You have to remember too, another disadvantage is you have to remember to thaw it out before you cook it. And if you don't have a microwave, you need to plan that into your preparation. We don't want to see people thawing things out on the counter, that it's thawed out in the refrigerator, and make sure that it's safe. So just some things to think about with regard to freezing meals. Another thing is you want to make sure that you mark what it is and you date it, because everything frozen can look the same. I didn't follow my own advice, and I took out what I thought was chili for lunch. And when I opened it up, it was spaghetti sauce with no noodles. And it looked exactly like chili, but it wasn't the same. And when did I find this out? When I brought it in for lunch at work. And so it wasn't the best experience for me, but making sure that you write down what it is on that label, on that lid, because it's amazing how quickly time can go. You think, oh, I just put that in 3 months ago, and it ends up being a year and 3 months ago, very fast. So writing down what it is. Another option for quick meals are the meal kits and takeout meals. And so there's this push and pull between time versus money. You are definitely paying more for takeout meals and meal kits. Meal kits have taken off unbelievably. It's a huge business now. Places like Blue Apron or Hello Fresh or Plated are some examples of meal kits. And they come with all of the ingredients as well as the recipes for that particular meal. There's certainly some benefits to that because you're going to have some variety. You might be trying some things that you've never tried before. There's portion control, so you can only eat what they've sent you, right? And so you're less likely to overeat. There may be less food waste as well because they're sending you just what you need for that particular recipe and not more. And oftentimes we'll have to maybe buy a bottle of something that we only use a tablespoon of, and then we have it in the refrigerator forever. And before we get to it, it might spoil. And we do know that family mealtime is so important. Researchers have shown that parents that were more likely to establish, meal times if they received help in planning, designing, and preparing meals. So this provides that opportunity for meal preparation. So what are some of the drawbacks of these meal kits? Sometimes it's healthfulness. Some of the meals are not as healthy and much higher in sodium than other foods that you might make from scratch. There's a huge packaging waste. Sometimes it takes about 30 boxes just to ship the meals that you get, just to keep them safe. And so there's that extra packaging. And cost, you pay for the convenience. And so it's important to acknowledge that as well. So all in all, it's a personal preference. There's no right or wrong answer to this. It's just some suggestions on quick meal ideas. So let's talk a little bit more about meal planning. Right now, what we'd like you to do is take out that pencil and paper and write down foods that you like to eat. So write down as many of your favorite foods as you can think of in 1 minute, and we will time you. As you're getting to the end of your list and your time and you're running out of ideas, take a look at the list here of the different food categories, and that might remind you of some things that you have forgotten. All right, time. Let's have maybe 3 people just unmute themselves and say, what are some of the things that you put on your list that were favorite foods? You just want to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Katie. I have a shorter list, but I ended up putting down red peppers, snap peas, beans, and corn on the cob for starters. I probably could come up with a lot more, but that was a start.
That's a great start. And it sounds like you're thinking about things that you can get at the farmer's market or get from your garden. And right now that's everything tastes so good.
Yeah, this is Christiane Christensen. I had put down beef, chicken, pepperoni, cheese, cottage cheese, nuts, peppers, onions, celery, carrots, and corn.
Yes, thank you, Christiane. One more, who'd like to share?
Well, you guys are so healthy. This is Jess Kempton, and my first things on my list were tacos, pizza, spaghetti, and cheese and crackers.
I love that. Thank you, Jess. Absolutely. Some great things to write down. And sometimes it's just helpful to have that list somewhere that you can refer back to, because we need inspiration. We need some ideas. I tend to make, and I think some of the others, some of you might feel the same way, seem to repeat a lot of my meals, making the same thing over and over, because I know it's successful. I know it's, my family likes them. And so going back to those same types of things and just maybe making some different changes with sides or different changes with some of the ingredients. So thank you so much. I hope that was a good exercise for you. So let's talk a little bit about that planning piece. There is really no one right way to plan. There's, if you go onto Pinterest and want to feel really intimidated, you'll see all these beautiful books and handouts of how to make a menu. And it can be kind of scary. My planning doesn't look like this. My planning looks like more like the one on the right, where it's a kind of a, oh, here's my thought for the day. I'm just going to write something down. And maybe it's just the main entree for the evening meal that I'm putting down. And I will fill in around the different ingredients. And so that just helps me to know how to plan for grocery shopping as well. So if we plan meals at home, we want to do it even before you start shopping. And that's really going to save you some time and money. I often will do menu planning, meal planning on Tuesday, because where I'm from in Mankato, that's the day that all the flyers come out for the grocery stores. And I can find out what's on sale. I can look at those price leaders they might be having, and I can think about the things that I'm really wanting to purchase in the planning process. It's really helpful to do a menu plan, meal plan for 7 days, and grocery shop maybe once every week or every other week. The less often you go to the store, the more money you'll save, because we're less likely to make an impulse purchase if we don't go to the store as often. Also less likely to make an impulse purchase if we write down what we're going to purchase and stick to our list. 1, remember to bring the list along, and 2, remember to stick to the list. So after you've planned your meals, you make your grocery list, write everything down, all of the ingredients that you might need. And then it's important to check your cupboards. Never assume that what you have in your cupboard is still there. Somebody in the household might have had a midnight snack, and so it's no longer there. So just double check, take off the items that you don't need, that are still in the kitchen and still on hand. And then you'll have the list that you'll need for all of the recipes that you're making. Cross out those items that you've already got. Next, you're going to want to look at the coupons that you might have, and clip any coupons that you're going to use for foods and that are on your list. It's not a deal if it's not something that you were going to purchase anyway. And then arrange your shopping list. And this sounds silly, but it really does work. Arrange your shopping list by your favorite grocery store, the grocery store you're going to. Because again, you're more likely to make an impulse purchase if you have to go back and forth in the store. I think about going to the store for just a gallon of milk. And I want you to think about any store you go to, grocery store you go to. Where's the milk in relationship to the front door? It's always in the back of the store, isn't it? And is it a direct line to the back of the store, or do you have to weave in and out? You generally have to weave in and out, and this store is designed specifically for us to part with our money. And so the longer we spend in this store, going through, looking at those end caps, looking at those really great sales that we maybe didn't plan on purchasing, we spend more money. So trying to stick to that list when at all possible. I'm going to turn it back to Mary, and she is going to give us some other additional helpful hints.
So now we're going to get into a little bit more about you actually doing some of your own meal planning, because that will help prevent that question of, what's for dinner. The first tip we like to share is start simple. If you are kind of new to meal planning and haven't done it before, you probably don't want to start tackling a 7-week menu for every meal. I'd encourage you to start small, maybe find your challenging meal. If it's your evening meal, that might be the meal you want to work on. Or let's say maybe you've decided you're going to eat out less when you go to work, so you want to start bringing your lunch from home, and maybe that's the place you want to start. So again, just find something really simple and start with just a couple of days to start with. I like to do kind of 5 days because I like to keep my weekends fairly flexible in terms of my meals, but I really like to make sure I have my evening meals planned. So that's kind of what I do. And I pretty much just stick to the evening meals where I plan. Plan your entrees first. That is something nice to work around. And we're kind of going to assume too that you have a nice variety of fruits and vegetables, like Kelly had talked about when you went to the grocery store. You have the fruits and vegetables that are available. So you can really kind of mix and match those, because those are the ones that typically don't take a lot of time. It's more that main entree that's going to take a little bit of time. So that's a great place to start. When I do my meal planning, like I said, I pretty much just plan the entree. And then I just have that variety around there. But when it comes to like preparing the meal, I just kind of do a mental check of like, yep, I have a vegetable check and I have a fruit check. So whether you want to write it actually down on your menu or just make sure when it comes time to that meal prep that you're doing those fruits and vegetables, you just want to make sure you get those in there. And oftentimes people have, if they have their entree, they kind of have a complimentary side dish or vegetable that goes with it. For example, if I make like a beef roast, typically we have like carrots with that. So you kind of have those things that go along really well together. So keep that in mind as you're doing your entree too. Involve the family. Family members of all ages can give input on what they would like to see served, or maybe something they haven't had for a while and are kind of craving. Making that list, like Kelly said, is very, very helpful. And I'd really encourage you to take some time, some evening, or if you're waiting for an appointment or something and have a couple minutes, just really start to make a list and have family members help make that list. I just keep mine right in my recipe box. And when I'm looking for, I'm like, I'm kind of in a rut, I need something different, I can pull that list out. I'm like, oh, I forgot about, Philly steak sandwiches. That's something we haven't had for a while. So you can fill them in, and it just helps to spark your memory a little bit more. So again, ask the kids, some of the things that they like so that they can add it to their list. Be ready to switch and allow flexibility in that meal plan. The nice thing about the plan, it's a plan, it's not set in stone, but if you have that plan, you can easily adapt it because you have the foods that you need to make those things. So for instance, on Monday night, on my meal plan, I was going to make a meatloaf. It ended up, my husband decided he was really craving BLTs, so we had BLTs instead. It wasn't a problem. We had the ingredients for that, but then now we can have meatloaf tonight. So we're just able to kind of flip things around with the menu, and it works really well. And, because your food preferences do change throughout the week. You might think it sounded good one day, and then the next day you're like, oh, we had that in school, or I ate out and we had that. So nice to have that flexibility. And also your schedules change. So it's nice to have some things that are really quick. Last night we had some things going on, and so we just had scrambled eggs and toast. So again, it doesn't have to be a fancy meal. It can be something really simple and easy to do too. Finally, save your menus. This is really helpful. If you write them down, keep it handy. And then some week when you maybe don't feel like writing a menu, you can just pull out one of your old ones and maybe adapt it a little bit for the season, and then you're good to go. So it just saves you time. And I also work as a clinical dietitian. I know I have had a couple patients that will bring in their whole menu for the entire month. So a whole range of spectrum from planning one meal to planning an entire month. And she just kind of rotated through all the time. So that was neat to see. So next slide. Okay, this is kind of how I do my menu planning, and kind of some things that they do suggest from the research to kind of help a little bit. So you're getting the variety in there, and you're not getting in a rut of doing the same thing all the time. So I'm going to show you 3 different methods that you can use when you do menu planning, and you can mix and match them as they do it. It just helps to kind of get that variety in there and to kind of get you out of that rut, or to spark your mind so it doesn't take you as long. So this first option is looking at your menu in terms of the protein source. And again, we're using primarily meat proteins. you follow a vegetarian diet, you can certainly adapt it for different non-meat items. But so for instance, I put down the meat protein sources that we mainly use, beef, chicken, pork, fish, and beans. And then each day I just kind of go, okay, I'm gonna have a hamburger on Monday, chicken and rice on Tuesday, ham and scallop potatoes on Wednesday, tuna noodle casserole on Thursday, and then on Friday, I'm gonna have a bean burrito. When I have those kind of categories there, it makes it go fairly quickly when I'm kind of writing down my menu. And I do like that menu Kelly was showing you on the right-hand side where it's just on a piece of scratch paper and I just do the main entrees. So next slide. Here's another option, and this is more by the type of meal. So on Mondays, a sandwich, Tuesday, it's a casserole, Wednesdays, meat and potato, Thursdays, eggs, and then Fridays are soups and stews. So again, example, Monday might be a tuna salad sandwich, tater tot hot dish on Tuesday, baked chicken, mashed potatoes, scrambled eggs, and in my chat covering up my last one, chili for the stew or the soup. And again, if you look at this one, you can still see, even though I don't have like the different protein categories, I did try and make sure I rotated the different type of protein source. So I didn't have like beef on every day of the week, just keeps the variety in there. So next slide. And this is a fun way to do it, more of a theme meal. And especially if you have children, this is a really fun way for them to get involved. You could do like a meatless Monday, a taco Tuesday, breakfast for dinner, one dish meals, and a Friday favorite. And this focuses a little bit more on what are kind of maybe some of those foods you like on a Friday favorite. Or if you don't follow a vegetarian diet and you want to be a little adventurous, maybe you want to try that meatless Monday and have more of a vegetarian protein source on those days. So again, you can pick out your own themes, but those are some that tend to work fairly well. Again, you can mix and match them. So next slide. Okay. So one of the things that oftentimes happens is you maybe attend a webinar like this, you go to something and you don't get a chance to actually apply what you learned. You may have things that when this webinar is done, you have to get started on something. You're like, yeah, I really need to meal plan, but I don't have the time to do it. So like we did with that making your food list, would like to give you just a couple minutes for you to really plan a menu out. So we picked out 5 days here. We picked out weekdays. If you prefer to do weekends or add your weekends, you certainly can. But we'd like you to kind of plan just one meal. It might, maybe you want to do your breakfast, maybe you want to do lunch or your evening meal. But if you could plan out your menu, we'll give you enough time to hopefully get your entrees done. If you want to add in some other things, you certainly can do that too. So we'll give you about 3 minutes to fill it in, and I'll maybe do a little talking while you're filling it in too. Just a reminder too, you can use those ideas if you want to put the protein sources up on top. You can certainly do that at the beginning. Remember, there's also the option of doing it by like sandwiches or casseroles, or you can do kind of those fun theme meals, meatless Mondays, taco Tuesdays, favorite Fridays. So kind of think of some of those things too. So pull out that list that Kelly had you do too with your favorite food items. That might be a nice way for you to kind of look to what are some different things that you might want to put on there. And also think of your schedule, maybe if you're doing it for this week or for next week. Are there nights when you have things going on where you're going to be a little bit busier and you need a quick meal? Or is there a night where you know you're going to be home and you're going to get home early, and maybe that's the night you want to make more of that meat and potato meal that's going to take maybe a little bit longer in the kitchen. So we'll give you a couple more minutes to fill that out. And Kelly, when time's up, I'll just have you start then.
Well, great. We hope that you had enough time to fill out a week's worth of ideas for your entrees for maybe the next coming week. I was reminded of when my children were growing up, and when Mary mentioned the themes. Friday night was always pizza night at our house when my children were young, and it wasn't always takeout. Sometimes it was homemade pizza. Sometimes it was those little muffins, and then they would build their own types of pizzas. But it was always easy to plan for a Friday night because that was pizza night. Now, as my children are gone, Friday night tends to be grilling out night. And that's also kind of something fun to look forward to at the end of the week, is that using the grill. And sometimes we just need some inspiration when planning our meals. And so there are pre-made menus available both online, and you can consider school menus, or senior dining menus are always in the newspaper. And so you're looking at those senior menus, you might not choose to have it exactly how it's written. And please know that those federal nutrition programs are very healthy and very good choices, but you might not find that you really are thrilled with all of the choices. But as Mary said, that flexibility is so important that you can swap things out as needed. With the University of Minnesota, we also have a 2-week menu that you can consider, and we'll send you the link for this as well. And it really, you need to consider your own personal food choice, tastes and preferences. You may have a special diet or allergies, or require kosher or halal foods. And then you just need to make those particular substitutions. This 2-week menu really does use a lot of the non-perishable canned and some easy to access perishable foods. To go along with the menu, you will see the shopping list. So the shopping list is there for you, and you can, and it's for both weeks, and you can kind of look at it according to what's in your cupboard. You may have many of the staples like the flour or the vinegar or the spices that you might already have on hand. And again, you can swap things out with the other items that you might like for example, there are frozen vegetables. Well, at this time of the year, you might want to use fresh vegetables, and that's just fine. Along with that 2-week menu and the shopping list are also recipes to go along with it. And the recipes, there are 15 different recipes, and here are 2 of the recipes, and they are intentionally larger for servings so that you can use them for do-overs later on. We wanted to share some different resources as well. And one of our resources is the Real Life Good Food. And this is a place that you can go to for some healthy eating tips, some recipes, as well as some physical activity ideas. So we encourage you to go onto that website. The first time you go, it will ask you to sign up, but after that, you don't need to do that again. Iowa State University Extension is also a great resource for you, especially when it comes to shopping, and the recipes are wonderful. And so we encourage you to go to those recipes and take a look at those. They have pictures. I always like pictures with my recipes, so I know what I'm looking at. And another place to get inspiration online is also just recipe books. And looking at recipe books can give you some great ideas. Choose My Plate has a recipe section, My Plate Kitchen. What I really like about this is that you can search by ingredient. So for example, this summer when I had more zucchini than I knew what to do with, I could type in zucchini and get all of the recipes from their database that included zucchini in the recipe. And that really helped me a lot. And Mary's going to talk a little bit more about food assistance.
We'd like to just mention a few different resources that are available. If yourself or someone you know does need a little help buying food, food has really gone up tremendously the last 6 months especially, and it's predicted to continue to increase. So again, letting people know some of these assistance programs is very helpful. So next slide, Kelly. We're just going to go over them just very quickly, kind of just letting you know what is out there. We have the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is SNAP. And that is Some people know that better as the food stamp program. This is the new name, and it's been the new name for quite a while. So that is available. WIC is also an option for women, infants, and children. And both of these programs, they are making much more accessible because of COVID in terms of ease of applying for it and also how you can shop online with these. We also have the school meals. Right now, school meals are through a waiver. They are free for all students. One thing I do want to mention with that is if you know of parents of young children, make sure that they are still filling out the free and reduced lunch form, because that is needed for other financial aspects of the school. So just making sure they fill that out. And also just letting you know that if you hear concerns about like school meals right now, or that they're not having a lot of variety, schools are really having a tough time sourcing some of the different foods. So they're having some, just like anything else with the shipping issues. So just keep that in mind and really be encouraging to those school nutrition folks. They're having a tough time right now. And finally, the Minnesota Food Helpline. This is a great resource to go to for a variety of different things. It'll tell you where some of your different food shelves are, and also where some of the different, like during the summer feeding programs are. So again, these are all wonderful resources that are available. Next slide. And next slide. Okay. So the last thing I'd like to do is really just kind of wrap it up. And if you could just, again, grab that piece of paper, jot down 3 things you learned, 2 things you plan to do as a result of listening to this webinar today, and then maybe 1 new food you'd like to try, or 1 thing that you put on your menu that you would like to share with others. And we'll just kind of open it up really quick and see if some people have some ideas of things that they would like to share that they put on their menu. You don't have to give us your whole menu. You can just kind of do a couple days if you'd like. I know some people have been putting it in the chat too, which is great. If you want to add it to the chat too, you can certainly do that.
Hi, this is Katie. I could share mine. I mean, I did put it in the chat, so I'd be happy to defer to anybody who hasn't had a chance to share yet. But in general, you'll see it there. We're trying to lean toward more healthy-ish choices. I think we've got, health concerns that are cropping up that we want to be mindful of in our family. So anyhow, using more brown rice, doing salmon once a week, or just a fish of some sort. But we also have kids in the household, so we're trying to throw in some fun stuff, things that we know are winners for them, like super nachos or something like that. So thanks.
Yeah. And I see you had the bean supernatural. So you're incorporating some beans, and like you say, you're trying to take something and still make it a healthy version, which is awesome. That's a fun way to do it too, is take a recipe that you have and try and see what you can do to add a little variety to that. Anybody else that would like to share? We have several things in the menu. I see microwave baked potato is a good one that people have shared. I saw earlier on, someone had put egg in a hotel. I know some people call that, what's the one with the toad? I can't think how it's called. Toad in a hole? Is that what it is? That one has many different names. And when I teach classes for childcare providers, a lot of times that one will come up and people will be like, oh, I haven't made that for a long time. So we're hoping this kind of spurs some ideas of things that you haven't made for a while, which is really helpful. Next slide. We do have a quick evaluation we would like you to fill out. It just kind of tells us what you thought of the webinar today, and also gives us ideas of maybe some future webinars you might like to do. The first question on the evaluation is going to ask which session did you attend, because we have several different trainings. So you're going to want to click on the simple, now I totally blanked my mind on what it's called. Simple Steps to Meal Planning is the session that you're in today. So a couple other things while you're filling that out. Kelly, if you just want to go to the next slide. We do have a variety of different other upcoming webinars coming up. This is from our entire Center for Family Development, and we just have a whole plethora of different things that you can take trainings on. We have identity and theft scams, health and nutrition, financial capability. I believe there's one more slide too, isn't there, Kelly, of another list of some other ones we have coming up. Yeah, success in school success, and that one is done specifically in Spanish. We also have a variety of different things related kind of to post-COVID, and finally getting to know your neighbors. So really encourage you. That will be on the link we will send out shortly that will have all these other webinars. So take advantage of those. I know there's one on child identity theft that I was thinking I definitely want to listen in on that one and hear what is new in that area. So next slide. Okay. Finally, there's just a variety of different ways you can engage with us. We have a Facebook site, Instagram, Twitter, a variety of different ways. Those will all be on the information I'll send you to. The Facebook page is nice because you can kind of get updates a couple times a week on what is happening in all the different areas of family development, not just health and nutrition. So next slide. Okay, and finally, here's the information for Kelly and I. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know, or if you have an idea specifically you'd like us to follow up on, maybe for a webinar and you didn't get a chance to put it in the evaluation, you can certainly email us at our numbers. So in conclusion, I just really encourage you to take that time to do some meal planning. I know for myself personally, it doesn't always happen. I kind of go in streaks where I won't meal plan, but now I'm back in the habit of doing it again. And I just know it just makes my evening so much easier when we, know what we're going to have for the meal. Everyone kind of knows. So if someone else gets home earlier, they can start that meal going. And it does kind of take one less thing out of the day when we kind of know what we're going to have. And it does prevent that question, what's for dinner, because you've already planned and know ahead. So any last minute questions that people have? Good. Well, thank you again for everyone for joining us. And we will be sending out the follow-up recording. So if you want to forward that to someone else, you can certainly do that. And then we'll also have the list of all the different resources for you to check out with different recipes and just a variety of different sites that you can explore and help with that meal planning. So have a good rest of the day, and thanks again for joining.